It seems like everyone is talking about self-hosting for their Next.js app and actually moving away from platform as a service, mostly because of pricing and also because there are some features that you can't use with some of the well-known platforms. So in this video, and actually in the next few videos, I'm going to walk you through installing and setting up your own hosting for Next.js apps. And I'm going to show you a lot of examples. So we'll start with installing a single server on DigitalOcean on a tiny droplet that will be fairly cheap. And then in other videos, we'll go up to hosting on Kubernetes or serverless platforms like Lambda, for example. And I'll show you what is required, right? And the trade-offs between platform as a service, where you basically don't need to manage anything, to self-hosting when you need to take care of backups, updates, and all sorts of things like that. So let me show you how to install Next.js on a single droplet in DigitalOcean. That will be around $5, starting from $5 per month for the hosting, and everything you need to actually do it. In this example, I basically used Claude to prompt most of the installation instructions. I had to tweak it a little bit. So I'll go over the installation and the setup scripts, but you can do it on your own, right? It's fairly simple. But I just want to show you what you will need to actually run it yourself, right? You have environment variables, you have backups. You also want everything to be simple to install, right? With platform as a service, you just push to Git and then it magically appears on your server. We want to maintain the same level of simplicity when deploying, right? We want to be able to set it up once and then mostly forget about it. Okay, so let's dive in. I'll show you exactly how to do it. We have a lot of work ahead, so let's get started with the requirements. And we want to set up a single server, in this case on a DigitalOcean Droplet. So this is a very cheap server, a cheap VPS. We want it to be very easy to deploy, meaning git push, just like we do with the platform as a service. And it should allow us to scale, right? Even though we are using a single server, technically a single server can take you a long way. So in this case, we want something that is scalable, and DigitalOcean is, right? With a single server, you can still increase the hardware specs. You can add more CPUs, more memory, depending on what you need. And as long as we're not talking about redundancy, which they can help you with, and we'll probably create another video for that. This should be scalable enough for us. So in terms of what we need to do on this video, we will create a server on DigitalOcean. We will set up a firewall. We don't want people to hack us. So this is the first thing that you need to take care of now that you're not using a platform as a service. You actually need to set up a firewall. You need to take care of security. That's on you. Then we need to set up DNS, handle static hosting. So we have the server side stuff and we have the static content that we have. And you don't want Next.js, like Node.js, to actually serve the static content. That is not efficient enough and not as scalable as using something like Nginx. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll host the static content on Nginx on that same server. We will set up SSL certificates. So unless you are, and you probably should, use Cloudflare or something in front of it, of the server, you should probably set up SSL. You want security for your website. Then to make all the magic happen when you git push to the main branch, we will set up Github Actions. We will need to take care of the .env file. I'm only going to touch that briefly. We want to make sure that we're setting up monitoring for our server. Okay, again, another thing you need to take care of. Now you own the server. You need to make sure that if it goes down, you actually know about that and have time to react and bring it up. And of course, backups, patching, these are things you own now. Again, there's some drawbacks to actually managing your own server. So the first thing that we need to do, again, is create the server in DigitalOcean. I'll just set up a new droplet Very simple. Let's set it up in New York. I'll choose Ubuntu. And let's do something like this. So let's keep it very cheap. Right? Do I want to pay $4? Yeah, let's pay $4 per month for this server. I think this should be enough. And we talked about backups. Let's enable automatic backups. So daily backups, that should be enough. That's $1.20 per month. That should be good. 4 p.m. UTC, I don't care. Let's just back it up. Let's set up an SSH key. Okay, you need security. I really don't recommend using passwords. Just set up an SSH key. Use ChatGPT, Claude, if you don't know how to do that. It's just a few commands and you'll be able to create a new SSH key. I can set up improved metrics and alerting. It's free. And that's pretty much it. So let's name this server. Why am I not naming it? Where do I need to name it? Host name, so let's call it Next.js demo. Okay, let's create this droplet. It only took a few seconds. So the next thing I need to do, and this is mainly, I'm doing this as the first thing just because of the DNS propagation. I want to set a name, a DNS name, so we can later set up SSL, and I want it to be available. So the first thing I'll do is just copy this IP address and actually head over to my DNS and configure it. We'll be right back. And now let's connect to the server and actually set things up. I'll connect to it using SSH, and I'm in. So to install the server, just before I start running all of these, let's go over all these. And really, these are from Claude, right? I just had to tweak it a little bit. You can do the same. I'm installing a few things on the server. So we're installing Node.js, of course, because it's a Next.js app. We're installing NPM. Nginx. So the Nginx server is going to be in front of the Next.js process, and it will also be used to host the static files. I'm going to use certbot, so that's Let's Encrypt, to create an SSL certificate. And these are the things that I install. Now, we don't want to run everything as root, right? We want a specific user for Next.js. So we'll create the user. We'll prepare the app directory, set up a few things. And now we want to create a service. So we want to run Next.js, right? We want to run it, and we want a daemon to be up and running. So I'm going to use systemd. There are other options, but this is fairly simple. So this is a service. You start it. If it fails, you can restart it. Okay. So we have a new daemon. We enable it, Next.js. We also want to set up credentials and the whole thing for the Github Actions. So Github Actions, your worker in Github Actions will have to connect to the server to actually deploy things. So we're setting this up. And this is basically the first step. So let's just run all of this. So let's run it in batches. Let's run this in a few batches. Let's make sure to install the packages. Okay, we have all the packages set up. Now we switched over to the Next.js user. We'll create just the context here. Let's exit, go back to the root user. Okay, create the systemd configuration file, and let's just execute the rest of it. So we're basically at the end of the file. We're basically setting up who can access the server. We're using the SSH keys for that, for authentication, and we are done with the first part. Okay, so we have everything installed, almost everything installed, but now we want to set up SSL, and I'm going to use certbot. There's this thing with certbot and Nginx, like a chicken and an egg problem. So what I'm going to do is use the standalone command line to set up the certificate, the initial certificate, and then later on we will install Nginx, set up Nginx. So let's do that. Let's create the certificate. So certbot is basically creating the certificate for us. A thing to note, right? With certificates, you need to make sure that the domain is correct. This is the domain that will be registered, and it has to be available by then. That's why we created the DNS record ahead of time. So let me run this. Okay, email address, email that we have. Okay, yes, I agree to the terms. No, I don't want to share anything. Okay, so Nginx, we installed Nginx, it's running, and now it interferes with the certbot. So let's do no, I don't need service. I need service Nginx stop. I'll stop Nginx, and then I'll reinitiate the process for creating the certificate. And we're done. Now we have the certificate files on our system. You can see where it set up the private key and the certificate file, and we're good to go. We can go over and set up the rest of it. We can set up Nginx. So let's edit the sites available. So we're creating an Nginx configuration here, and we're telling Nginx to do a few things. So first of all, we're setting up SSL. We're telling it where the app will run. These are folders that we prepared ahead of time. There's nothing there yet, but later on when we deploy through GitHub Actions, it will all make sense. And then we will pass everything to whenever you're looking for a non-static element, we will route you to Next.js, and then everything static will go to this folder, right? So Nginx will be reverse proxying the Next.js service, okay? And then it will serve the static files on its own. So it's fairly simple. So let me just edit this file. I'm using Vim. Let's do set pist, and I'll just copy everything here. Could probably do everything in a script, right? I could create a script for everything here. For now, I don't really care. I don't need to scale it. It will take us like 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops to set up everything and forget it. So I'm not really worried at this point of overcomplicating things and scripting everything and infrastructure as code, everything. It's just a single server. Come on. Okay, so let's get back. We need to actually create a symbolic link and tell Nginx, yeah, this is what we want to run. And now for the next part, which is interesting, we want to make sure that certbot, so let's encrypt, renews our certificate, right? Each SSL certificate has an expiration, and we can tell cron, so this is the scheduled task process on our machine, to actually go ahead and renew each day. Try to renew the certificate if required. So I'm going to edit this file. Okay, we're creating a cron job, and I'm going to say, sorry, in this case, this is not just a comment. Okay, we're telling it to renew. That's it. Technically, the server is ready. We need to start the Nginx service. Oh. Okay, so Nginx is running, but we don't have an app on the server, right? We didn't set up anything. So now we need to go ahead and actually set up everything in GitHub Actions. So let's look at our GitHub Actions file. So we have, I just have a simple demo website thing from Tailwind UI. It's awesome, by the way. And just a website. I added a GitHub Actions file for it. Okay. Again, I didn't write it. I just prompted a few things and fed it to Claude. And basically what we have here is a pipeline, a job that will install everything set up everything with Next.js. It will build it. And then it will go ahead and deploy this to DigitalOcean. Okay, so once we push something to the main branch, we get pushed to the main branch, we will be able to deploy it. Now, here's what you need to know, right? We're using some secrets, right? We have the SSL certificate. We are going to pass the public Next.js, the next public site URL. These are all things that we need to pass into this to GitHub Actions and the build, and we need to do it securely. So before I am going to commit this and push this, okay, I will go over to GitHub, go to settings, secrets and variables and actions, and I will create all of these four secrets. So we have DigitalOcean do_host do SSH key username and the next public site. Okay, in this case, I need to edit the host because I changed it. I updated the host, the SSH key. Basically, I pasted in the private key, which I am definitely not going to share with you. And then the username, that's the Next.js user that we used, and the public site URL, and that's it. And now let's make a small change, maybe to the README file. I don't know. Let's do something here. Test. I don't know. I'm just going to push this. I'm just going to add this as a hi. We want to deploy. I'm going to commit and push. Okay, so we pushed our changes to GitHub, and now if we go to Actions, we can actually see that we have a workflow that is working. Okay, I can go in and actually see what it does. Okay, and it's done. We deployed the server, and now let's open the app, and you can see that it is deployed. So basically, we have a workflow where I made a change, pushed it, and now it's live on a server that we own. And we have a few tasks that we actually need to complete, right? We talked about security and monitoring. So let's go for security. Let's go to networking and edit the firewall. Okay. So we'll need to create a firewall. So let's create a new firewall. Let's call it Next Demo. Then we want to be able to SSH to the server. So I will keep the SSH rule. Then I'll add HTTPS because we need incoming traffic. And that's it for now. So let's just add the droplet. So we have the Next.js demo. We're associating our droplet with this firewall. And that is it. Now we have an additional security layer over our app, but we still need to take care of security regularly. And what does that mean? We need to make sure that the server is up to date with all the packages. So we need to update packages from time to time. We need to update the packages within our Next.js app. So that's one thing we need to do. Backup, we took care of that when we installed the service. And then now for monitoring, we want to set up alerts for our resources. So we can set up a few things. So for example, if the CPU is high, we want to be alerted. Okay, I want to send myself an email in case the server is getting highly utilized. That may indicate that I want to upgrade the server. Same goes for memory, disk utilization. We don't want to run out of disk space. And basically, these are the major things. I would also add another test, use something like an external service that checks the uptime of our app. That is also important, something preferably that is not in DigitalOcean. you can do that. There's nothing more annoying than actually being alerted that your server is down because you received an email from one of your customers. So I think this is it, right? We set up the server. We have everything we need. You can scale it up. You can scale it down. You can add more resources. You can add databases to the server if you're not using SQLite, or you can add Postgres, for example. You can use MongoDB. There are a lot of things that you can start adding here. And stay tuned for the next videos. I'm going to cover more things, adding redundancy, working with load balancers, working with CDNs, Kubernetes, and containers. This is going to be a whole series about all the options that you have for Next.js. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video.